Good day, grade 11s, and welcome to our Term 1 recap. And really for Term 1, you only had 1.1 and 1.2, but they were fairly long modules. So again, in this recap, we're just going to go through them, breeze through everything that you've already studied, and it will be a great help when it comes to tests and exams, especially going into Term 2 and Term 3. So, in Term 1, like I said, 1.1 and 1.2, all about ICT, looking at, and these are typical questions that come up, the role of ICT and the value of ICT in the workplace. So we looked at things like, how does ICT influence one's life and one's lifestyle? How has it made things easier for you? How has it made things better for you and for the workplace as well? There's a tip for you immediately, right? So that's something that gets asked. Then near field communication. Now, please just take note. Some of these things I have added some things here. I've taken a couple of things out. So it might be different for you. NFC comes up often as well, the near field communication. So understand what that is, how it works. There's a typical example. I mean, we use this almost every day. It's also changed how we communicate, right? Maybe you're not on Facebook, but you're on WhatsApp, you're on Instagram, you're on all these different things. And the unfortunate bit is obviously that things are never switched off unless you actually switch it off. It's changed the way we access information, okay, through a whole lot of different means other than just going to the library, which is still a good source of information. It's changed things and influenced how we spend our leisure time, movies, videos, internet, all of this, booking vacations, online gaming, all of these different things. So just bear that in mind because it can come up as questions in scenarios, specifically how ICT has influenced, here we go, the workplace, okay? The fact that repetitive mechanical actions can be done by machines. Machines can do it quicker, faster, more efficiently without having to take breaks, right? It does, however, have a negative side to it, so do go through that as well. I don't even have to explain this because I think at this point we all know that we've chosen the correct subject and that yes, CAT is the most valuable subject out there, especially in today's digital world. And I'm not saying this because I'm biased, and I am very biased, but that's okay. It is the most valuable because we use these skills in everyday life, in all of these different areas, in all of these different sectors. You'll find the skills that we are developing here, that you are developing here. You are going to be able to use them in all these various sectors. So please, that's just the first section, sort of looking at, ICT, and obviously the best decision you could have made was taking CAT. Then we move on to the computer itself. So we're looking at what we would term the information processing cycle from grade 10, where we are reminded that we take input, we process it, we produce output, and somewhere in the middle here, we also store that. Okay? So we've got storage. In grade 12, they'll add communication to it as well. But this is the computer. So we obviously start looking at things like, what is the computer? So when we talk about the computer, we have things like laptops, smartphones, tablets, desktop computers. We understand that a computer is multi-purpose in its function. It's an electronic device, and some of them are portable, mobile. And what makes something portable? The battery. Right? That's the big thing here. Then you have different types of computers. And again, questions can be asked on this. And I'll give you tips as we go through. This is a typical one asking you, what makes a device portable? Why is a laptop portable? Well, because of the battery. Okay. What are then the advantages of a portable device over a non-portable device? Okay. Things to consider. Then your types of computers, you have your servers, your desktops, your laptops. In fact, it works from the bottom up. So they're indicating to us that as we go up this ladder here, the physical size gets bigger, and so does the processing power. These over here are our portable ones. Do smartphones work with batteries? Yes. Tablets? Yes. Laptops? Yes. Notebooks? Yes. Therefore, they fall under portable computers. So they go into a bit more detail. Again, you would have done this, and they just show us what we, or some of the ways in which we actually make use of these. And again, they just press on portability. Your laptops and your notebooks, we know how they have been constructed. Hinged screens, keyboards. We've also got our power settings. This is a typical question that comes up. How can you make sure, or how can you ensure that your battery life, which is now on 50%, can actually stretch, let's say, for another few hours? What can you change without doing any hardware setting changes? You can fiddle around with your power settings, right? You can customize when the screen turns off, when the computer goes to sleep, all those different things. So those are typical questions. Your tablet, they just went into detail on what a tablet is as opposed to a hybrid laptop or tablet, the one where you can, take the screen off and have the laptop function as a tablet and the laptop. Smartphones, I think we don't even have to go into details on that. We know what the smartphones are, what they do. And then there was something else known as a microcontroller. Now, this is an integrated circuit that provides specific operation, and it's usually embedded in a system of some kind. So they mention here, typical microcontroller includes a processor, memory, and programmable input-output pins, which can connect to peripherals. And they give us a little example here of a fridge. And I think this is that one that you can actually see into it. I think the one that you actually knock on it and then you can see. So there's a little microcontroller built in to be able to do that. Here are our servers. Please, with the servers, you must know. Don't necessarily need to know what it looks like, but know that it's the central computer in a network that contains collections of data and programs. They are more powerful than your typical computers, right? You need to know that. They provide services, file sharing, file storage, internet access, all of these things. Then another set of questions that usually come up revolve around dedicated devices. What's the difference between a dedicated device and a general purpose device? Maybe pause this video and ask yourself that question. Get the answer, right? Dedicated performs one specific function, so it does it well because it does just that function. It's designed for that particular task. General purpose is obviously different, can do more. We then spoke about the wearable computers as well. So wearable devices, and we call it a wearable computer because essentially it can do a myriad of different activities. So your smartwatches. Look at how much your smartwatch can actually do, right? There's different sensors, from heart rate sensors to your sleep monitors and all these type of things built into one. We go further on to these glasses here that can be operated via voice command, right? Again, wearable computing devices, wearable computers. And they just give you a number of different examples that are out there. Then, folks, when it comes to the computer, I know this is going to take up most of the screen here. This is your motherboard, and by now we know that. So what is it you actually need to know for the purpose of exams from your motherboard? Well, first of all, you need to be able to identify that this is a motherboard. Secondly, they would want you to know where the CPU slots into. They would want you to know where the RAM fits into, where your power supply fits into. Up here on top, these are ports for your sound card, for your audio. These are USB ports. Now, some of them, in some cases, will be black and others will be blue. The blue indicates it's a faster type of USB port than the other. This is for your network cable, which means this is your network card that is here, or your network interface controller. You've got your VGA over there, your HDMI, your USB-C. Those are the basic ones that you need to know and you need to be able to identify. Here again, the next one, is your expansion slots. Now, what does that mean? When we talk about the expansion slots, it means it's a slot in the motherboard that's connected to the motherboard. And what does it do? It expands the capability of the the motherboard. Can you see all these ports here? These are all built into the motherboard. These slots allow you to put in extra cards to expand the capability of what this motherboard can do. All right. There are some various slots they're just showing us. And then they moved on to protecting your information. Theft of hardware is a reality. And folks, this is a typical scenario that comes up in the papers. How to protect your hardware from theft. So please go through that. You see there, we can record serial numbers, use cable locks to chain equipment. You can bolt the equipment down into the or onto the desk or into the floor if you want to. Lockable cabinets, motion sensors, any of these things. Then with the old Eskom, our wonderful friend over there, we need power even when there's no power. And for this, one of the ways in which we get around this is to use the UPS or uninterrupted power supply. Please, this thing has a battery in it. It charges from Eskom, let's just put it that way. And it feeds that into a battery. Obviously, the battery is built into this. Your computer is then connected to this and it runs off this machine. So the computer doesn't know anything about this over here, right? The computer is drawing its power from the battery in the UPS. When this power cuts out, the battery keeps going. Therefore, the computer keeps going, right? It stays on. But the UPS is there to give you enough time to actually just shut down the computer safely, making sure that you've saved everything. That was it for 1.1. And then we moved on to 1.2. So 1.2 went a bit further now into input and output specifically. And we know what input is. So I'm not going to go into too much detail around that. We are inputting data. And there are various devices that go with that. Digital cameras. That's an example of an input device. And they give you advantages and disadvantages. And folks, you know you're only going to look at two of those. You need to know the specs that determine the quality of an image. And then they give us a number of them. So please go through those. We've also got our scanners. What do? They scan a physical item and bring that information into the PC. Right? On that, please just know that the image or the image quality rather of your scanners is determined by your dots per inch. So the higher that number, the higher the resolution. It's also influenced by the quality of the particular document in its original state as well. And they give us some advantages and disadvantages. You can go through that. Again, you need only really know two advantages and two disadvantages. We also have biometric input, where we are capturing unique biological features of a person. So scanning your fingerprint, your iris, your voice, all of these different things. We've seen this especially on our phones. We've seen it on various devices as well. We've seen it in the movies over and over and over. So just familiarize yourself with that, because it does come up. And again, they will ask you, if they do bring it up, what are the advantages of maybe one over the other? What are perhaps disadvantages of biometric input versus normal security? They'll also talk a little bit about input at ATMs, right? That the ATM gets all its input from the user. And again, with that, the advantages and disadvantages. How many do we need to know? 2. Okay. This is one of the bigger ones. Your POS system, or your point of sale system. Now, we know our point of sale system because we go to the shops, they use the point of sale system, and it works for the most part. It works well. Now, in that, we can have barcodes and RFID tags. And you can see here, they are used to automatically recognize a product or item. That's what the barcode and RFID tag does. Barcode scanners, what do? They scan the barcode. RFID tags store data on the tag itself or on the card, and that is detected wirelessly. Okay, so there's an example of a barcode scanner. Yeah, your phone is scanning this QR code as well. So it's used again to automatically recognize. Now, then they mentioned to us that RFID does not need to be scanned in a straight line, whereas your barcode must. And here you can see our barcode. It would need to scan. And I think maybe you've taken notice at the shop sometimes when they're scanning something, sometimes they have to like smooth out the packet or particular product in order for them to scan properly, because you need that for the barcode scanner. With the RFID can be read from a longer distance than barcodes. And here they just give us a breakdown of the difference between a barcode, a QR code, and an RFID tag. And you can pause this to have a look at some of these. I'm not saying you need to know all of this, but it is helpful. So when we look at our POS system, there is our POS system now, right? We've seen this picture, I think, even from grade 10. And with that, how does ICT work with the POS system? How does it enable the POS system to help us work faster? Think of all the technology involved in this POS system, right? And then you can understand and work out what those advantages and disadvantages could be. Near field communication, okay, we went through that already. Touch screens, that's something that comes up as well. Remember, we're talking about input devices. I don't even have to go through the advantages and disadvantages of touch screens. We all know that. We also have data collection devices like meter readers, devices in the hospitals as well, weather buoys in the oceans, various things to monitor temperature, pressure, and humidity in controlled environments. And again, can you see all of these things? They went through advantages and disadvantages with each one of these. Limited to 2, and then that should ease up the amount that you need to go through as well. Right, and they also mentioned input into smartphones and consumer tablets. Now we know how that works. The big one here is your accelerometer. You know, when you turn your phone on its side from portrait to landscape and the picture actually changes, that's the accelerometer picking up that change and adjusting that image, rotating that whole image. You do get things like your alternative keyboards as well. That is something that comes up often. Alternative input devices like your game controllers, your VR controllers as well. And that sort of brings us to the end of input. Then on the output side, when we look at what the output is, which is providing the user with feedback in their interaction with a computing device, providing the user with a more permanent copy of the results, right? In other words, printing something out, getting a hard copy, and it allows the transmission of data between computers and electronic devices, just meaning you can share things, right? So we get different types of output. We get visual output, we get sound output, we get touch output, and we get other output. I mean, your touch output, the vibration on your controllers, right? Your speakers. These two, your soft copy and your hard copy, always know the difference. Then your display devices, obviously they also allow the user to make a choice or interact with the program because you've seen it on the screen and then you can make a choice. It also displays the results of the processing. And guess what? Once again, the advantages and disadvantages come up. So please familiarize yourself. You're going to hear me say that over and over again. Please familiarize yourself with that. Now, this is important. Specs when dealing with a display device. Your screen size, a question often comes up with that. What's the size of the screen? How do we measure the size? The resolution. What do those numbers mean? What does resolution mean? What is the contrast ratio? What's the difference between the contrast ratio and the aspect ratio? What is meant by the response time? Maybe I say, well, I need a monitor with a 1 millisecond response time. What does that mean? And I think the last one really here is, how is it connected to my particular computer? Does it connect via HDMI or VGA? What's the difference? What's the advantage? What's the disadvantage? Okay, those are typical questions that come up. I hope you're taking note. Okay, so here they mention, and now they start going through it. The resolution, the aspect ratio, the contrast ratio. Again, folks, you can go through this. The response time, there's our difference. We've got our VGA cables, we've got our HDMI. One transmits video only, the other one video and sound. Then onto the printers. Please, for the most part, you're looking at your inkjet printer and your laser printer. What's the difference? Which one is faster? Which one gives better quality? The monthly duty cycle, we're talking about the number of pages that can be printed per month without the machine breaking, right? Number of colors if it's a color printer. Can it deal with different paper options? Which one can, which one can't? So here, for example, we have our laser printer. And they give us different specs, but this is a color laser, right? This thing is far more expensive than a regular inkjet printer. But you're going to get more prints for longer. It's going to last longer. It's going to give you far more than you would out of a normal inkjet, but it's going to pertain it's going to be influenced, or your decision is going to be influenced by the scenario. Okay, your inkjet, good for printing at home, maybe 200-300 prints, photo quality prints. That's where your inkjet is going to come in. And then you also have your 3D printer. Now you need to know this. You need to know that with your laser, it was toner that we used to print. With our inkjet, it's ink. With our 3D printer, it's filament. For the grade 12s, if the grade 12s are watching this, this is vitally important for you. You've got a printhead that takes that filament, which is almost like a plastic, and melts that. And it melts that onto this plate, layer by layer, right? So with that, the advantages and disadvantages. Wireless technology and output devices, they mentioned there as well. Wireless printing, sound without wires, like connecting via Bluetooth, things like that. And then your interactive whiteboard. So what is meant by an interactive whiteboard? Why is it better than using just a projector? Right? What should you be looking at? What can it do? Better interaction. More functions can be manipulated. Okay, notes can be made on the board and saved. That's one thing I always liked about that. And then a few disadvantages there as well. But we know our rule. So then ask us what makes it all work, and that's drivers. This is essential. You need to know this. It is software that allows a computer to communicate with hardware or devices and control them. So what is it? Software. It's a piece of software. It's a program that allows the computer, Windows, whatever it is, to communicate with the hardware. So the driver tells the computer there's a printer connected. It's an HP, I don't know what, DeskJet 357Z. They always have these weird numbers. But it tells it what it is, and it tells it what it can do. So that Windows knows exactly how to work with the hardware that's been plugged into it. Okay? Operating systems, please know this, have a large collection of standard drivers built in. Everything obviously uses a feature called plug and play, which is a big deal because it detects and configures a device like your flash drive. It plugs it. You plug your flash drive in, and what happens? It comes up with a message, says it's picked up something, and it works. Plug and play. Okay. Then one of the biggest and most important sections, simply because it's so misunderstood, is this one of input and output for physically challenged users. Please know the difference between being impaired or blind. Okay? There's a big difference. I wear spectacles. I'm visually impaired, but I'm not blind. So if I ask you, how can you you help me work with a PC in an easier way because I'm impaired? There are a number of things. We can increase the size of certain things. You can't tell me, because I'm visually impaired, that I need a Braille keyboard. Folks, no, I'm not blind, right? So please just know the difference between the two. Hearing impaired and deaf, same story. I mean, most pupils in most schools are, and the teachers will agree, hearing impaired. Or is it just selective hearing? Okay, now, there's a difference between that and being deaf. If you're deaf, you can't hear. So turning up the volume doesn't work. When I'm hearing impaired, you can turn up the volume. You can use on-screen notices instead of sound. Vibration devices, things like that. Maybe I've got motor control issues. Now we've got major issues. So we could use eye tracking devices, head movement devices. Think of Christopher Reeve, Superman, that got thrown off a horse and then he was in the wheelchair and he could really do nothing else except, I think he was paralyzed from the neck down. But he was able to use a number of these devices in order to do what he needs to do. So please familiarize yourself with that. Here's a number of different devices like the puff suck switch device, your foot mouse. There you've got a foot mouse as well. You've got joysticks and trackballs. So all of these things are here. Here are another few examples of trackballs as well. Here's an example of a braille printer. Okay. We can even use speakers, and most of you are familiar with your screen readers, your speakers, and then your input and output and health issues. Now, this is again a question that does come up often. RSI. So let's just take a step back. When we're dealing with health, we're saying that let's just go forward here. When you work with your computer, some of you sit like this. Some of you sit like that. Some of you even do this. Okay? So, do you think that if you're sitting like that or laying like that for hours, you're going to develop a sore neck, backache, things like that? Yes, because of repetitive strain injury. When you do the same thing over and over and over for hours on end, are you going to pick up an issue? Yes. Ever seen how these guys on these YouTube videos are sitting with or standing with motorized desks and things like that? This is why they do this. So when we look at input and output devices and our health issues, we are looking at the way we sit and the way we use these devices. So you want to manage how you work. Move around every hour. Don't just sit and stare at the screen for too long. Use keyboard shortcuts, do exercises to relieve tension in the joints. All these different things, folks. And really that sums up what 1.2 as a module wanted to get across to you. And this is basically what you needed to know for term